We are just past the top of our third hour now here on Morning Joe, and we begin with the anniversaries of two events that changed the world.
My brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life. To be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it. Those of us who loved him and who take him to his rest today pray that what he was to us, what he wished for others, will someday come to pass for all the world. As he said many times in many parts of this nation, to those he touched and who sought to touch him, some men see things as they are and say, why? I dream things that never were and say, why not?
That was Senator Ted Kennedy at the funeral of his brother Bobby. Second funeral he would have to mark. And today's June 6th. David Ignatius, two monumental things happened on this day, of course. The assassination and the death, the assassination of the 5th, the death of Bobby Kennedy on June the 6th, 1968, a day that really marked, in many ways, a low point, the chaos of the 1960s. And I must say also, a day that many say this country still has not recovered from politically. And the second, actually, a glorious achievement, and that was 79 years ago today. More than 160,000 American, British, and Canadian troops landed in Nazi-occupied France during World War II in the largest air, land, and sea invasion ever. I've been to Normandy so many times, and it's still, every time, it's incomprehensible that these 18-year-old kids, 19-year-old kids, the boys of Hont-de-Hoc, scaled the walls, liberate. As I said the day they were going in there, you were going to liberate the continent from Nazi tyranny, and that they did.
Joe, I remember being with you on one of those anniversaries in Normandy and looking with you out across that field of memorials, crosses, and Stars of David, and then looking at those cliffs and seeing what those young men, they were mostly men, had to contend with, how they had to fight up those cliffs in the face of overwhelming fire. And they did that on that day. And I remember talking and thinking about how our world really is built on the courage and sacrifice of those people. The other thing we celebrate today, I remember vividly, I was a young man of 18 when Bobby Kennedy died, and there was a way in which life seemed to break in that moment. He was a person, whether because of his family or the change that he'd gone through,
an extraordinary change.
He'd been a very conservative guy, conservative voice in his brother JFK's ear, but he became somebody who identified with all the progressive things happening in America's civil rights movement, the need to end the Vietnam War. And it is true that day when he was shot, it was as if the hope that he embodied had gone away. So it's good of you to mention these two anniversaries. One that makes us very happy, D-Day, pride for our country. Another that's still painful even now.
And Gene, the fearlessness of Bobby in his final years, the extraordinary ability to grow from somebody that worked actually for Joe McCarthy and was the hard, tough voice in his brother's ear when he was Attorney General, to this extraordinary man who, of course, we remember the most eloquent words spoken after the death of Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, Indianapolis, and Jeff Greenfield, who said he followed him around as a speechwriter throughout the entire campaign. He said, that night when he's quoting Greek poets.
Quoted Aeschylus.
In Indianapolis. That night I said, well, did you help him with that speech? He said, the son of a bitch wrote it in the car going in. He said maybe one of the great speeches in the half century. He had all these speech writers. He wrote it in. And I always tell this story because it says all you need to know about Bobby Kennedy. That night, the Indianapolis police said, we can't go in with you. It's going to be too dangerous. Yeah. We can't go in. Everybody told him to stay out. Bobby went in, and Bobby delivered an extraordinary statement that night the night of April 4th. But in 1966, on this day, he was in South Africa, telling the young people of South Africa, you have the power in your hands, this generation, to change things. And that was the generation that ended apartheid, that freed Mandela, that changed the world.
Yeah, he was such an important figure. I don't know if people today who don't remember that day understand who he was and what he did and what he was going to do. I mean, it was his trajectory that everybody was following. I confess that, by the time he was assassinated, I was almost numb in 1968. Dr. King had been killed just a couple of months earlier, and a couple of months before that, in my hometown, there had been the Orangeburg Massacre, where 3 young black men within sight of my house had been killed by white state troopers in a demonstration. 3 unarmed men, 27 other people shot and injured. And by the time we got to June, it was too much. It was in 1968. It was too much.
And Willie, we going back to D-Day and young men there. I remember on the 60th anniversary of D-Day, going over there, just walking through the cemetery with, by then, the old men who had charged those hills. And at one point, they're telling me these extraordinary stories. And I just said, man, what were you thinking? And he said, that's the thing. We were 18-year-olds. We weren't thinking. They told us to go up the hill. We said, okay. He said, it's amazing. He said that when he came back to the States a few years later, when he was 23, 24, he thought to himself, he said, I would have never done that at 24, at 25. Not in a million years. He said, but at 18, I knew I could do it.
Yeah, I was there last summer with my kids. I took my kids over there to see it, and they're old enough to appreciate it. And just walking through the American Cemetery, where there are more than 9,000 Americans laid to rest, a cemetery that was established, by the way, on June 8th, 2 days after D-Day, 1944, to start burying our dead. You just look at the ages, and they're high school kids. They're either the age of somebody who's still in high school or who just graduated, and you go, my God, they walked across a stage somewhere across our country, went to basic training, and then got on boats and went to liberate Europe. It's an extraordinary thing to absorb. And you used the right word earlier. It's overwhelming to think not just the scope of the military effort and what they pulled off and what Eisenhower pulled off, but the will of the world, the will of the West, the will of these kids, and they were kids, to go over there and fight an enemy that wasn't really on our shores. There was the threat that it could come, but it was to liberate people and to stop evil. And you ask yourself, as you walk through that cemetery, do we have that will today? And I think the answer for me is yes. A whole bunch of people signed up and put on packs after the 9/11, went and fought in Afghanistan. Look what we're doing with Ukraine right now, to stand up for freedom and to stand against evil. But that place, Normandy, for me, will be one of the 2 or 3 most special places in the world in terms of just witnessing what we can do when we come together and to witness the sacrifice of an entire generation of young Americans.
Yeah, and what was at stake, George? I mean, earlier this year we went to Auschwitz. We did a show from Auschwitz, saw what happened there. It was back over in Warsaw for the 80th anniversary of the liberation. Or not the liberation, but for the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And just the pure evil in the heart of Europe. That's what these kids were doing.
Absolutely, and that's, I mean, it's so important to just think of everything in a historical perspective, particularly today with Ukraine. I mean, that is as good not good, but as black and white of good and evil, good versus evil, as we have seen since that time. I mean, you could look at Afghanistan and Iraq, and there were just ambiguities there where we were engaging in essentially what were civil wars, where one party is fighting another party for control of the country, as opposed to an outside aggressor trying to squelch freedom in the country.